You ever had one of those days when someone walks onto your property like they own the place, and suddenly you're fighting not just for your land, but for everything it represents? I'm talking about roots, family history, and the kind of home that's been in your blood for generations. That's exactly what happened to me. A simple farmer tried to live quietly until a group of entitled neighbors decided my family farm was theirs for the taking. But here's the twist. I didn't fight back alone. My brother showed up in uniform. And let's just say, these people picked the wrong family to mess with. If you're watching this from anywhere, whether you face something like this or just want to know how a man stood his ground while his brother turned the tables, comment below. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and if you think Karen got exactly what she deserved at the end of the story. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this again. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from standing tall on your own land, backed by family, truth, and a little military muscle. Now, buckle up. This is the real story of how we made an HOA, which they'd never knocked on our gate. I live in a quiet town called Clear Hollow, nestled between rolling hills and golden fields. Just outside the city, peaceful roads, friendly faces, and the kind of community where everyone knows your name. It's the kind of place you dream of raising kids in, where parents wave from porches and kids ride bikes freely without a care in the world. My name is Travis Reed, and for over 10 years, I've been running my family's cattle farm, a piece of land passed down through 4 generations. My grandfather built the original barn with his bare hands. My parents were married under the old walnut tree near the north fence, and I've spent every day since keeping their legacy alive. It wasn't easy after Dad passed away, but farming is more than work. It's who I am. I wake up before sunrise, check the cows, mend fences, and keep things running smooth. Life was simple until they showed up. It started on a regular Thursday morning, the kind where you can hear birds singing and smell fresh earth in the air. I was out in the pasture, shovel in hand, fixing a broken irrigation line when I saw her, a woman in a bright coral blazer, stomping across my field like she owned the place. Behind her, 2 guys in matching polos were unrolling measuring tape, stepping right on my water lines like they didn't even notice them. "Hey!" I called out, pointing toward the old wooden sign nailed to the fence post. "Private property since 1946. You're trespassing." She barely looked at me, squinted instead, like I was some kind of nuisance interrupting her important business. "Actually," she snapped, pulling a folder from her bag like it was some royal decree. "You're in violation of Community Ordinance Section 9, and we're reclaiming this land for the Willowbrook Beautification Project." I stared at her like she was speaking another language. Reclaiming? This was my land. My parents were born here. How could some neighborhood committee decide it was theirs now? She handed me a paper. Eviction notice in 72 hours. Didn't make sense. Didn't feel real. But there it was, typed out in slick legal jargon. Some zoning loophole tied to development expansion. They claimed part of my farm had technically fallen within HOA boundaries. I took the notice and walked back to my porch where my dog, Hank, growled low as she passed him. She flinched, scowled, muttered something about unleashed animals, and kept walking. The next morning, they were back, this time with trucks, flags, and workers. They started staking markers like they were planning a subdivision. One guy walked straight into my corn row and began placing orange flags. I marched out holding a copy of my deed, asking what in God's name he thought he was doing. "Surveying," he said, "for perimeter beautification." I laughed. What else do you do when someone threatens to decorate you off your own property? Then came the real kicker. Around noon, I noticed one of the workers tried to mount a decorative fence. Trouble was, he picked the wrong side of the pasture where my electric fence lines run. I shouted, but it was too late. His drill touched the wire. Loud pop. He leapt back screaming, tossing the tool like it was a snake. No serious harm done, just a good jolt. But Karen saw her opportunity. She stormed over, voice shrill enough to startle the birds. "That was deliberate," she barked. "You assaulted my crew." I tried not to laugh. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "that's an electric fence. There are signs. You walked past 3. She didn't care. Pulled out her phone, threatened to call the sheriff, the city planner, and her cousin who worked in real estate law. Said, I was impeding community development, that criminal charges might be filed. I knew I needed backup, so I made a call. Just one. 30 minutes later, a dark green Ford truck rolled up with government plates. Out stepped my younger brother Nate, fresh off base, still in uniform, military police patch shining, sunglasses low on his nose. Karen's face shifted from rage to confusion as he approached. "Is there a problem here?" he asked in a tone that made everyone freeze. She cleared her throat. "This is a private civil matter." "You can't." Nate held up his ID. "Ma'am, I am a federal military police officer on authorized leave. I have full authority to assist in matters involving unlawful trespassing and veteran property rights under the 2008 Rural Protection Act." That was mostly true. Nate knew the law better than she did, and he sure knew how to deliver it like a boot to the chest. Karen's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to argue, but forgot the words. The clipboard guy shrank behind the truck. The workers started packing their tools. I just leaned on my shovel and smiled. Karen, though, wasn't done yet. "This isn't over," she hissed. Nate smiled politely. "Then I suggest you bring a lawyer and a badge next time. Otherwise, this farm isn't going anywhere, and neither are you." She stomped off in a cloud of dust, humiliated, but I knew she'd be back. HOA Karens don't just quit. They regroup, reload, and come back with clipboards full of petty revenge. What she didn't realize yet was that my farm wasn't just land. It was legacy. It was sweat, soil, and sacrifice. And she had just walked into a battle. She didn't even begin to understand. I wasn't just defending property. I was defending home. And she just declared war on a soldier's brother. The silence after Karen left didn't last long. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up with missed calls, texts from unknown numbers, and emails ranging from "you better get in line" to "I hope your cows get repossessed." At first, I laughed, thinking it was just more empty threats from the HOA echo chamber. But when I opened the Willowbrook Facebook group, one I'd never joined, I saw a pinned post by none other than Karen herself. It featured a heavily edited photo of my pasture with words overlaid. "Unauthorized use of land discovered. Local farmer defies beautification order." The comment section was filled with keyboard warriors praising her for standing up to rural freeloaders. According to Karen, I was some kind of squatter who cleverly embedded himself on land the neighborhood needed for its recreational development plan. That evening, someone dumped a pile of roofing shingles right at the entrance to my driveway, clearly meant to block access. Then came the signposts. Overnight, 4 identical signs popped up along the edge of my land planted by HOA volunteers. They read, "Future site of Willowbrook Community Garden under HOA oversight." I ripped one out and snapped it in half, tossing it into my compost pile. The nerve of them claiming they were taking my family's farm and turning it into a place to grow decorative rosemary and overwatered tomatoes was beyond infuriating. Nate was furious. He came back the next evening after filing a preliminary report with his base commander. He couldn't do much officially, not yet, but he made it clear he wasn't going to let this slide. "This is targeted harassment," he said, pacing my kitchen with arms crossed. "They're creating a false narrative and weaponizing social media. We've seen this before overseas and online. It always starts with disinformation." I raised an eyebrow. "So what now?" He grinned. "Now we play back." Word spread fast among the old-timers in town. The guys from the feed store stopped by with donuts and 2 fresh rolls of no trespassing tape. My buddy Lucas offered to lend me his drone so I could capture footage of any more unauthorized activity. And by the weekend, someone, definitely not me, put up a billboard near the HOA clubhouse with a cartoon drawing of a cow trampling a lawnmower and the caption, "Farm first, HOA later." The real surprise came from the bakery in town. Old Mrs. Finnegan, who ran the place since before I was born, put up a chalkboard sign in her shop window that read, "Now selling hotiers, salted and frosted." Inside were sugar cookies shaped like little houses with frowny faces. It became a sensation. People came from 2 counties over just to take selfies with the sign and grab a bite of sarcastic solidarity. Karen, of course, was livid. Her next move was more calculated. She filed a formal complaint with the county, citing me for having unauthorized utility infrastructure, referring to my well, my barn's old generator, and even my windmill. I got the notice via mail 2 days later. A scheduled inspection had been set for the following week. They even hinted that my livestock operation could be shut down if safety standards weren't met. Nate didn't wait. He made 2 calls, and within 48 hours, a decorated Army engineer showed up at my gate. His name was Captain Drew, and he wore full camo and boots that looked like they'd marched through 5 countries. "Heard you got an HOA problem," he said with a grin. Captain Drew ran a full inspection of the barn, the wiring, the well rig, and even the feed storage. He documented everything with a level of detail only someone trained by the Department of Defense could muster. "If your barn's wiring is unsafe," he told me with a wink, "then so is half the U.S. Army's logistics corps." He issued a signed and stamped statement certifying the farm systems exceeded military-grade standards. I couldn't wait to frame that one. Meanwhile, the HOA wasn't backing off. Karen had her crew post another inflammatory update online, this time accusing me of violating wildlife protection zones and alleging that my cows were destroying native plant habitats. The absurdity was almost funny if it weren't so dangerous. I got a knock on the door that night from a neighbor I barely knew, Ron, a quiet man who lived 3 blocks into the HOA development. He looked over his shoulder before speaking. "They're talking about fencing off your north field," he whispered. "Said they found some document from the original survey that says it's technically unclaimed buffer zone." My stomach dropped. That field was where I kept my youngest calves and grew the hay we use in winter. Losing it would mean buying expensive feed for months. Nate called his contact at the Department of Agriculture the next morning. They agreed to dispatch a zoning investigator to verify the original property lines. But even with that coming, I couldn't just sit still. I had to make a move of my own. That night, I printed off 20 large photos of Karen and her HOA volunteers trespassing, captured clearly on the drone footage Lucas had lent me. I didn't send them to the authorities. I posted them on a new website, protectthefarmnow.com. The site told my story with documents, timelines, and videos. I dropped a link on every local Facebook group, Nextdoor forum, and news tipping box I could find. Within 12 hours, the site had over 3,000 views. Nate's friend, who worked PR on base, helped push it even further. "You want public opinion on your side," he said, "because once the spotlight's on, they can't play dirty without being caught." Karen tried to issue a cease and desist on the website, but by then it had already gone viral. People weren't just reading, they were reacting. A veterans organization sent me a message offering legal assistance. A local podcaster wanted to do an interview. Someone anonymous delivered a bundle of yard signs to my property that read in bold red letters, "This land fed America before you ever mowed a lawn." Karen made one final move that week, a scheduled inspection by a neutral third-party code enforcement officer. But when the car pulled into my driveway, I recognized the passenger. It was her nephew, Jason, the same guy who got zapped by my electric fence earlier. This wasn't over by a long shot. But now, I wasn't the one under the microscope. They were. And Nate, he was just getting started. Moral lesson: never underestimate the power of truth, family, and standing firm on what's yours. Sometimes, the loudest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with courage, unity, and unwavering resolve.